Every single day, you're interacting with your bank. You're checking your balance, you're paying a bill, maybe just buying a coffee. But have you ever really stopped to think about what is happening behind the scenes? Well, today, we're going to dive into the hidden engine that powers our entire financial lives. Let's get into it. So let's just start with a really basic question. When you see that number in your banking app, where is that money? I mean, it's not like there's a pile of cash in a vault somewhere with your name on it, right? So where does it actually exist? The answer is, it's right here. Your money, my money, it all exists as pure data. It lives inside this incredibly specialized, high-security database engine that is always on, always processing, and always keeping track. It literally never sleeps. And that engine, well, it has a name. It's called the core banking system. And a great way to think of it is as the digital heart of the bank, constantly pumping financial data to every single part of the institution 24/7. So what does it actually do? At its most basic level, this is the master software. It's the central nervous system that handles every single customer account and every transaction that flows through the bank. We're talking every deposit, every withdrawal, every loan payment. It all has to go through the core. All right, so let's pop the hood for a second and take a look inside this incredibly important piece of tech. What are its main jobs? What's it really responsible for? And what's so interesting when you look at this is just how fundamental these jobs are. I mean, from the moment you open an account, the core system is in charge. It processes every single tap of your card. It's the engine that calculates the interest you earn or, the fees you might pay. And maybe most importantly, it's constantly balancing the books, performing these reconciliations to make sure every single penny is perfectly accounted for.
Okay, so inside that core engine, there is one component that is more sacred than any other. It is the ultimate record. It's the source of all truth for the bank and for your money.
This is the account ledger. You can think of it as this massive, highly protected table inside the database that holds the complete history of every single account. Every credit, every debit, the exact timestamp it happened, it's all here. And every transaction is an all-or-nothing event, instantly consistent and permanently locked in. Nothing, and I mean nothing, happens financially without being recorded right here. And this quote just brilliantly sums it up. The account ledger isn't just a record, it is the record. If the ledger says you have a certain amount of money, then you do. It's the final word, the absolute, indisputable source of truth. Okay, so let's walk through how this works in the real world. You tap your card to make a payment. Instantly, that transaction request hits the bank's core system. Immediately, the database updates the balances, debiting your account. A permanent, unchangeable record of that event is logged in the ledger. And then finally, that action can trigger other things, like that little notification on your phone or an entry on your monthly statement. But this unbelievably complex, high-speed system didn't just appear overnight. Its architecture has evolved so dramatically over the years, really tracing a path from a rigid, old-school monolith to the flexible, modular systems that we're seeing today. If you go back to the 70s, core systems ran on these huge mainframes. They were absolute monoliths, incredibly reliable, sure, but also incredibly rigid and almost impossible to update. Then, the internet happens, and banks began this really difficult process of just bolting on new layers for websites and apps onto this code that was decades old. But today, the big trend is toward completely new, modular platforms that are cloud-based and API-driven, built for the kind of speed the modern world demands. And this comparison really highlights that shift perfectly. On the left, you've got the old way, secure but rigid. On the right, the modern cloud-native approach, flexible and fast. But look at that one constant at the bottom. The absolute core requirement for stability has not changed one bit. Legacy cores were rock solid. Modern cores have to be always available. That promise of reliability, it's sacred. So we've looked at the tech, we've looked at the history, but let's zoom out for a second. Why is understanding this deep, back-end system so important? What's the actual real-world impact for all of us? Because this one system, this core database, it's the central hub for everything. The ATM you use, the mobile app on your phone, the data a bank teller sees in a branch, all the analytics engines. They all pull their information from this one single source of truth. And that gets us to the most crucial point of all. These databases, these core banking systems, they do so much more than just store and process numbers. Their accuracy, their reliability, and their security, that is what allows us to have confidence in our financial institutions. They are, quite literally, the technological foundation of trust itself.
And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. Our money is now almost entirely digital, living inside these incredibly complex systems. So what are the real consequences for us and for society if that fundamental digital trust ever begins to erode?